right now we're looking at targeting help for folks who really need it, and not for states, not for blue states that want to get bailed out, but because of the way they have dealt things in the past, they don't deserve that right now.
In Utah, we come together. We try to solve our problems, and we don't try to make them partisan. And there's still people who are struggling, and there's still more work to do to support them.
Just 10 minutes ago, Representative Ben McAdams and Burgess Owens, his opponent in the 4th Congressional District, just finished squaring off on the debate stage. This is one of the country's most competitive congressional races and likely to be one of the closest races in Utah. The 4th District, which includes portion of Salt Lake and Utah counties, has been a battleground since the state gained the additional seat a decade ago. In 2018, McAdams, the then Salt Lake County mayor, defeated two-term Republican Mia Love by less than 700 votes. Joining us tonight for our post-debate analysis is Derek Brown, chair of the Utah Republican Party, and Jeff Merchant, chair of the Utah Democratic Party. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us again tonight.
Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you.
All right, so COVID-19 was the lead topic in this debate as expected. Representative McAdams spoke from his personal experience with the virus, the health, and the actions of Congress, while Mr. Owens spoke primarily about the economics of the issue. So how do you think they each did on the topic? And Derek, we'll start with you.
Well, I think this is a great chance to kind of see the differing approaches. There weren't a whole lot of areas where they really differed. There were tonight a lot of kind of personal back and forth. And first of all, I think it was great to finally get a chance to see the candidates themselves. I mean, there's been so much money being poured into this race, from all across the country. And so I think it was a nice opportunity for people to kind of see them and see them answer questions. But on issues like like COVID, I mean, they talked about the mask mandate, and I think it was interesting that you had Burgess that said, no, I wouldn't support that. I think there should be an individualized approach, and Congressman McAdams just sort of dodged the question, didn't answer it. He just kind of talked about the fact that he wore a mask and thinks that's a good thing. And so that's one of the few areas where I think you did see some difference.
Jeff, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Derek is right. It's great that the candidates were able to finally get together and to start, defining themselves for a change, as opposed to having all of this outside money doing it. And I think that, yeah, there weren't a ton of differences that we saw, particularly on the COVID issue. As Derek said, it seemed like both of them agreed that wearing masks were a good idea. Obviously, having had COVID-19, Ben McAdams has a unique experience among many politicians, and I think that one of the things that really differentiated these two candidates, in my mind, was the approach that they're going to take when, when they're in Washington.
Right, exactly. So Derek, this question is for you. Representative McAdams, he challenged Owens on his opinions on pre-existing conditions. Did Owens defend himself enough to your satisfaction?
Well, I think this is one of those issues where you make a statement, and we see this all the time in politics. You see a statement that is made, and there was something on the website that talked about the difficulties with ACA and how he thought it should be repealed. And then literally millions of dollars have been spent saying Burgess Owens is a terrible person. He wants to take your medications away and deprive you of coverage for pre-existing conditions. And so, I mean, I think he was ready for the issue because, I mean, he has seen literally millions of dollars spent. And I mean, this is something that any of us who've been watching TV for the last couple of weeks, we just can't get away from it. And most of the money that is spent is not from here in Utah. This is coming from out of the state of Utah, really attacking both of these candidates.
Jeff, do you want to respond to this question?
I mean, I completely agree with Derek. I mean, right before the debate, we saw an ad, and as we were walking into the studio, we saw another ad. And so, I think that this is only going to continue to get, dare I say, worse as we get closer to Election Day. And then I think we'll all breathe a big sigh of relief when the ads finally stop. And again, I think that's the importance of this debate, right? It gave these candidates the opportunity to finally define themselves as opposed to being defined by people in Washington.
Right, we finally got a chance to hear from them. Okay, Jeff. So a reporter asked McAdams about whether human trafficking issue is a political action and issue. Do you think he defended his viewpoints well?
Yeah, I think that he did. You know, look, I think that this idea of human trafficking becoming a Republican versus Democratic issue is slightly odd. Ben McAdams has been on the forefront of this. He's passed legislation regarding human trafficking. I think that the reality is that there's no one in this country that thinks that human trafficking is a good thing. And, you know, despite what Burgess Owens said, I do think that he's dipping his toe in some level of conspiracy theory here, particularly as we start talking about the QAnon related stuff, which, you know, for better or for worse, Ben McAdams went after him on.
All right, Derek, about a minute left. I'm going to give you a chance to chime in on this as well.
Well, I think ultimately we got a chance really to see who these candidates are. And I think, you know, Ben McAdams he is a nice guy and he plays a great nice guy. And I think towards the end, as Jeff was saying, you know, he sort of took the gloves off and went after Burgess Owens. And I think Burgess was able to defend himself on a lot of these different issues. And you know, you get the feeling that these candidates wish they had more than just a 60-second response, because literally millions of dollars, as we talked about, have been spent talking about Burgess and his comeback and kind of accusing him of someone who's failed, and you know, sort of making him wrong and bad for the failures that he's had, rather than talking about the comeback and who he is and how he's learned from that. And so I think you see in these candidates kind of a difficulty, because they want to explain, you know, everything that's happened, everything that's been said about them, and yet they get 30 seconds, 60 seconds to do it.
All right, gentlemen, I want you to just hold that thought. We have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue our post-debate analysis on the 4th Congressional District with Derek Brown, chair of the Utah Republican Party, and Jeff Merchant, chair of the Utah Democratic Party.
We the people, the most powerful thing that we have is our ability to communicate to each other, talk to each other, care for each other, and that no one does it better than we do. So no, there's not systemic racism, people.
For me, progress starts with listening. My door is always open, and I hear from people across our community who feel that doors aren't open to them, that they may try as hard as they may try to get ahead, that they're not afforded the same opportunities.
Representative Ben McAdams and Burgess Owens, his opponent in the 4th Congressional District, squared off on the debate stage tonight. Now, this is one of the country's most competitive congressional races and likely to be one of the closest races in Utah. The 4th District, which includes portions of Salt Lake and Utah counties, has been a battleground since the state gained the additional seat a decade ago. In 2018, McAdams, the then Salt Lake County mayor, defeated two-term Republican Mia Love by less than 700 votes. Before the break, Derek Brown, chair of the Utah Republican Party, and Jeff Merchant, chair of the Utah Democratic Party, joined us live in studio for a post-debate analysis. Gentlemen, we will pick up right where we left off. So our ABC4 chief political correspondent Glenn Mills asked both candidates about the Black Lives Matter movement and systemic racism, like you heard there at the top of this segment. We just replayed part of the responses. What do you think about what each of them said? And this time, Jeff, we will start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, we heard what they both had to say. And to be honest, on this one, I just have a fundamental disagreement with Burgess Owens on his position on this. I think that, you know, the riots that we've seen, the anger that has been expressed both in the state of Utah and outside of the state of Utah is overwhelming. And I think that it's time that we start taking some action to change the systemic racism that we have within our communities.
Yeah, Derek, I want to hear your response on this, because Owens not only once but twice said that systemic racism doesn't exist, and after that I just saw social media blow up. So tell me what you thought.
Well, I think Burgess speaks from a very unique position that nobody else on that stage can speak from. I mean, this is someone who grew up in the South in an area where there was there was the kind of racism that we hear about. If you've ever seen the movie Remember the Titans, I mean, that really was Burgess's experience. I mean, that's how he grew up. And so this is someone who has been through highs, who's been through lows, who's experienced it. And so I think rather than sort of discounting his experience, his lived experience as an African-American man here in the United States, I think it's important for us to step back and say, well, maybe he knows something about this that those of us who haven't experienced this don't know. Because I think when you have someone who's had that kind of experience, And you hear others who haven't had that experience criticize him. I think the reality is, as a state, as a voter base, I think we ought to give people the benefit of the doubt and assume that in fact he does have something valuable to say on this topic.
I want to bring it back to those negative ads that you and Jeff talked about as you guys were walking into the studio. I mean, if you watch TV, there's no way that you can miss seeing one of the Owens or McAdam ads. What do you guys think about these ads and the money being brought in by these other organizations to run them? And this time, Derek, we'll start with you.
I can't wait for them to end. This morning I was at the gym, and on 20 minutes on the treadmill, I probably saw 10 of them, probably 5 talking about what a terrible person Burgess was, and 5 talking about how terrible Ben McAdams is. And so, the reality is, as a state, we don't appreciate that. That's why these debates are so valuable. And for those who are watching who didn't see the debate, go back and take a moment to actually watch it, because you get a feel for what's going to happen. A number of months ago, when Burgess won the primary, he and I had a conversation. I said, are you ready to have out-of-state money, millions of dollars, vilify you and say you're a terrible, awful human being? And he said, look, I know that's what's coming. I wish that weren't the process. I wish that weren't how it happens. But he knew that that's what was going to happen, and that's exactly what's happened. So I'll be more than happy to see them all disappear.
Jeff, how do you feel about this?
Well, I mean, I completely agree with Derek on this one. Again, this is why I listen to Audible and I don't watch TV when I exercise. But the reality is that there's a deeper issue here, which is this constant flow of money coming into politics. I had a conversation with someone just today who said, for all of this money that's being spent, do you really think people get some benefit at the end of the day if their candidate wins? And whether that's the case or not, it's time for Congress, it's time for all of us to act to try and stop the amount of money that's flowing into these races, because the simple bottom line is that it really is destructive to, in my opinion, the democratic process, but also just our day-to-day lives.
All right, I want to know, in your guys' opinions, who won the debate tonight? And this time, Jeff, we'll start with you. Okay,
last time I kind of hemmed and hawed on this one. I'm definitely going.
We want a straight answer from you.
Yeah, I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it to you. Ben McAdams won this one. He definitely won it.
Derek?
Well, I think, honestly, Ben is clearly the more skilled debater. He's someone who worked for the Clintons and ever since then has been involved in politics in one way, shape, or form. Burgess is brand new at this. And so while I think that from a stylistic standpoint, McAdams may have done better, I give Burgess a lot of kudos, because this is the first time he's done it.
All right, Derek Brown, chair of the Utah Republican Party, and Jeff Merchant, chair of the Utah Democratic Party. Thank you for joining us for another post-debate analysis. We always appreciate you having on the show, and we look forward to having you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.